We're live.
Okay, this is Senate Appropriations, and we're not working on the budget exactly. But we are taking up bills that carry an appropriation, so it does tie into the budget. And our first bill that we're gonna take up this afternoon is S-159. And we have Senator Hardy here to report the bill, and carries an appropriation and also carries some assistance resources from Ledge Council and Joint Fiscal Office.
Yeah.
So if you would just run through this quickly.
Sure,
And then we'll do our usual surgical procedure.
I'm expecting it,
Okay.
as long as I get cake.
All right.
So this bill is about it's a study, a county and regional governance study. And it's one of those weird bills where it's a little bill, but it's gotten a lot of attention, from people who are following issues at the local level in Vermont. Many of our towns have capacity issues, are not able, we talked about it on the floor today, just with the open meeting law, and many of our towns are not able to provide the services that that people need because they're small and they just lack the capacity. And then there are a lot of issues that could be better addressed if we had some kind of regional governance, county governance or regional governance that was more uniform across Vermont.
Well, we sort of do that in our waste management districts where we're going across, and we're
Yeah.
seeing more with shared highway equipment, so.
Yeah.
So this is, variation. or
Yeah, it is.
on that concept.
And a lot of the local governance stuff that we have don't follow the same lines. So you might be in one waste management different district, in a different CUD with different towns, in a different county, and a different regional planning commission district. And so there are some towns that are sort of caught in between all of those things and don't have the consistent. And some of the small towns lack services, some of the large towns are sort of provide services that they don't get, that to other towns that don't pay for them. So they're depending on where you are, and you have some counties like Essex that has very few services, and then more sophisticated and heavily serviced Chittenden County. So there's lots of different variations. So what this would do is provide a comprehensive 2-year or 1.5-year study on the potential of strengthening county or regional governance in Vermont. And it would, and yes, it is a study committee of legislators, and it would be staffed by our legislative service agencies. But what the Government Operations Committee, originally, this was a full-blown sort of study committee with legislators and non-legislators. And I sent it to, as I said, Legislative Council, JFO, and Legislative Operations to ask them their opinion. And what we ended up with is a legislative committee with just legislators on it. So they didn't want to be staffing a committee that had majority non-legislators on it, because originally it had majority non-legislators. And where we ended up was with a technical advisory group that is advising the legislative committee, and the technical advisory group has all of the sort of advocates and relevant stakeholder agencies, and that would be staffed and sort of facilitated by the Vermont Bond Bank. And they have agreed to this. They've said they're excited to do it. They would sort of manage the technical advisory group, and the technical advisory group would advise the legislative study group. So that was one of the sort of compromises we made in order to make sure that we have the right people at the table but are not overburdening our legislative staff. The bill does include $50,000 appropriation, and that would be to hire consultants to do sort of the larger study of county and regional government. The administration, however, believes that they would be able to actually get a federal grant through FEMA as part of the sort of flood recovery efforts to actually do this larger study. Because one of the key things is that federal funding, including through FEMA and also during the pandemic, comes down to counties. And because Vermont does not have counties, we have to either bend over backwards to try to make it work on the municipal level, or we actually leave a lot of money on the table. So they believe, and I encourage you to talk to Doug Farnham if you want to hear it directly from him. He believes that they could get a grant, that the $50,000 would actually be the match for that grant, and that the larger grant would, so combined, would be able to hire maybe the University of Vermont or some larger entity to do a lot of the work. So it would both take the pressure off our legislative service agencies and also turn state money into a larger federal grant. So that's why we ended up with this structure.
And that would be a one-time.
It would definitely be one time, and the federal grant would also be one time. So they are in the process of applying for it. Section 3, I asked the CRO Farnham for language to put it in here, so it was clear that that's what the intention is. And that's where the sort of September 15th, 2024, the Secretary of Administration would report to the committee on their efforts to get a grant. So that's the timeline he suggested and the language he suggested. So it's possible that if they get the grant, the whole thing could be sort of a, collaborative effort between this legislative committee and the administration and an outside entity like UVM or Norwich or Middlebury or some other place that could do a larger study.
So, questions that Minnie has, I did ask, Senator Hardy about the reference to the joint fiscal office and Ledge Council because of the workload issues. And maybe you can just speak to your conversations.
Yeah, so
Them.
thank you, Madam Chair. I did send the bill to Director Carby and Director Benham and Director to Mike. Ron, thank you, Director Mike. I sent it to all three of them, and part of the reason why we did the split with the non-legislative members being staffed by another entity was at Jen Carby's request to sort of not have them staffing non-legislators. And Catherine, can't remember exactly what she said, I don't want to speak for them, but I think that having the language in there that there would be the grant, and that would be the only thing that they would be doing is directing the grant. There's the fiscal analysis would hopefully be done by the outside consultants if there is any necessary fiscal analysis. So I'm not gonna,
the grant would go to the agency of administration.
probably the federal grant would, yes, yeah. So they would have the responsibility for managing the federal grant in sort of conjunction with this legislative.
So what happens if there's no federal grant?
Then they just have the 50,000,
Then they
I'm
would-
assuming we appropriate it.
Exactly. So I think that if the federal grant doesn't come through, they would just have the 50,000. It would sort of be a different scope of its study. And we could next session look at it again and see if we want to make changes. Because the report isn't due until November
24.
of 25. Yeah, so there's still time. So there's a lot of sort of hope that this will work, but trying to set up the structure. I can tell you that all the stakeholders are supportive and enthusiastic and want to be involved in this. Having just chaired GovOps for 1.5 sessions, I can tell you there's so many things that would be easier to tackle if we had strong county government.
Regional.
Or regional, I mean,
Little Essex capacity or Grand Isle, even under the best of circumstances, so that, we're such a small state.
yeah,
Okay.
So we did change it. It was at first just county and then we put in regional government.
So I think depending on the area of state, the 3 tri-counties, Northeast Kingdom has a very strong regional identity. But that's not true, except for Senator Sears, who reminds us that he's from the, forgotten
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
so,
debate that.
our normal process would be at this point to take, appropriation, we'll add it, in this case, it's not a base funding request, it's a one-time. And, other comments about the bill, yes.
Any other question?
All right, well, Senator Bruce, then we'll go to Senator Sears, and then to Senator Lyons. Okay, Senator Bruce.
I do think that the scope is huge.
Yeah.
And it's hard for me to imagine how, if there's not a group, like the study, the original weighting study from UVM was 300,000. So if we don't get a federal grant for this, it's hard for me to believe that 50,000 in this group in 10 meetings are gonna be able to do this. Especially since we're talking about county and regional governmental structures, and climate change and all these other things. So, I think it's very ambitious. I also think it needs to be done. I'm just wondering, you would be on the committee if there's a way to have it be understood that if the funding is not the maximum, if it's the minimum, that somehow the scope would be revised.
Yeah. I think that would certainly be feasible to do next session if we don't get the grant, then we could relook at the scope of the study, because you're right, and without the
Yeah.
larger grant that allows us to get
Yeah,
a bigger entity to work with, the scope is pretty challenging. And the other thing is, we toyed with not having the legislature involved at all, but because this is actually about government and government structures, we really need the legislature to be involved because we create all of the municipalities and all of the sort of local municipal structures. So anything that I think the legislature needs to be involved as the sort of leading the charge with the study, but you're right, I think we would have to come back on the session.
Senator Sears, you were.
Just a question about the 10 meetings.
Yeah,
It's over a year and a half.
Usually, well,
Yeah, Alice did.
I'm just asking for Alice Nick.
Yeah.
okay,
But seriously, seems like quite a few meetings and, there's consultants and others doing work. Yeah, I'm just suggesting that 5's a lot.
yeah,
That's a lot.
we were looking at it as a 1.5
Okay.
year study, so 10 was based on, 18 months of study rather than
Okay.
6 months.
well, I don't think it's a year and a
Or
half. It's
15 months of study instead of 18
It's-
months.
It's on page 4.
No, the
That's
report
not what I-
Starts in September?
It's 15 months.
Yeah, so from September 24.
So, I don't know.
Less than a month. What was that?
Do you
But if
do you have other,
No, that's on my own.
okay, so the question is, the 10
10
meetings
and
over the
15
15-month period.
Mhm.
Okay, that would be,
So that's kind of within Alice's spectrum, because she was more like 60.
Well, it's only 6 members, so that makes it better.
So,
okay, so, I'm gonna, I don't wanna cut you off.
No, I'm not.
On Senator Lyons.
yeah, so my question was regarding a committee made up of 6 House legislators, where the folks who were at the regional planning level and at the municipal level also have significant expertise in government. So it just seems to me, this is like taking a committee, a legislative committee, and then allowing it to continue its work. So I need to be convinced that that is the most effective way to achieve the goals that are here, because it is huge. I mean, I agree with Senator Bruce, this is a huge amount of work. So maybe you could elaborate a little bit on,
Starting with the executive director of the Vermont Booth, I assume testimony, and then you're on to the membership on page 5 as well.
Yeah, so page 5 has the members of the technical advisory
Yeah,
group.
and I'm looking at both the initial legislative group and then the technical advisory group.
Right, so the local expertise that you mentioned would be included in the technical advisory group. The Department of State's attorneys and sheriffs and the court administrator and the county judges, they're all the county level people. And then there's the regional planning agencies, the clerks and treasurers, VLCT, Regional Development Corporation, VSBA, City Management Association, and other relevant. city
Right, but my
groups. So-
question is this, why not just allow them to come in with their technical advice and bring that into the legislature?
Because I think the issues are big enough that we're gonna need the work in the off session to be able to tackle the way that potentially changing the government structure at the regional and county level would be necessary. So.
Okay, and how will it be coordinated? How are you coordinating the technical advisory group with the work that the committee is doing? It's trying to understand
Yep,
so there'll be a working relationship.
Between the study committee.
You've got the study committee and they're going out and collecting a lot of data, what other states are doing and so on. And then you have a technical advisory committee doing,
Advising the study committee.
yeah, so.
so the
Let's start
Vermont
that.
Bond Bank, and you're welcome to have him in, Michael Gahn. He is, totally game to do this. He would be the facilitator, the bond bank would be the facilitator and the sort of coordinator of the technical advisory group. And would coordinate the communication back and forth between the study group and the technical advisory group.
Just wondering, how did you, settle on the executive director from bond bank? Just out of
yeah.
all the
Yeah, so
items listed.
when we had all of these people in to testify on the bill, and the bond bank we settled on in large part because they are in many, they have a stake in that they are the funder of many school districts and municipalities. They issue bond, or, you know, that's where the bonding authority is. So they are aware of all the issues, the capacity issues in particular. They also have worked with like wastewater districts and all the sort of municipal districts around the state. But they don't have, for lack of a better word, a bias, you know, that says, this is the structure we want, this is the sort of, this is our, the thing that we want in this. They're more of a neutral party. And they also have, they themselves have the capacity. When I talked to them, they said they could easily do this. And I said, would you need any money? And they said, no, we don't need any money. So, I think that was another thing, is that they are an entity that we felt had expertise, but didn't have a direct kind of bias in the game.
Senator Stark.
Yeah, I'm wondering, where did the request come from for something like this? And why I ask that is, you know, we have town governments throughout the state. We have regional development agencies around the state. And up north, you try to get somebody to do something on the county basis, they don't have anything to do with it. You know, the county clerks, I mean, they run unopposed because nobody's even interested in county government. And so I'm wondering, because we have too much government anyways, for the most part. So I'm wondering who instituted the idea that we need county government to do this work.
Thank you for that question. So the bill was sponsored by all the members of the Government Operations Committee. Nobody requested us to do the bill. We did the bill because, as I said, frankly, after a year of chairing government operations, pretty much every single bill we did, it would have been easier if we had regional or county government that was more robust than what we have. And you look at public safety and issues with dispatch and EMS and law enforcement, if we had stronger county government and stronger oversight of county government, some of the issues that we're seeing with our sheriffs would not be such an issue because it would be stronger oversight of county government. So public loss, I know, but it's weak county government.
Yeah,
So we did a
it's
bill
usually
about,
on local and state.
yes, it's local or state. We did a bill about appraisals and property appraisals and the capacity of our towns to do property appraisals. And that came up multiple times. Oh, some of these issues would be easier to tackle if we had county level. We did, bill about, even the bill that you've seen, I think, about libraries, if we had library systems that were county. So there are a lot of things that would be easier to do if we had county or regional government that was actually transparent and accountable and functional in a better way. And almost every other state, all but 2 states have functional county government, strong county government. We are considered to have county government, but we don't really have strong county government. And the other big reason is because we are leaving money on the table that we could get from the federal government if we had stronger county government. Really, we are leaving a lot of money on the table. So this study, I think, is to provide better services to our constituents and also to provide more cost-effective services and partly funded through, federal funding sources and other funding sources that are generally reserved for county government.
So I'm going to,
To answer my question, there wasn't one single town that came in and testified, we really want to go to county governments in Vermont, so would you study this? It was all from within your committee.
did the league testify?
The league testified and they're supportive of the effort to do this work.
What are the other 2 states?
Connecticut and Rhode Island, I believe, don't have county government at all. Connecticut has a council of governments system. And we heard testimony from them about how their council of government works. And so that's when we changed it. So it was county and regional, because a council of governments is a possibility. That would be sort of a council of the counties and the regional planning commissions and all the sort of regional things, creating a council system like they have in Connecticut. And they're able to do some really cool things with their council of government. I mean, hearing their testimony, I was like, oh my gosh, if we could do this in Vermont, it would be so cool.
So I'm gonna go to center lines and I'm looking at the clock because we're really getting into the details.
Yeah,
So
just really quickly, so it would be helpful to hear from Good. If you understand that, for example, in New York State, they have the board supervisor, they have the county supervisors,
Mhm.
and they are also allowed to provide Medicaid dollars to countywide services.
Yep.
One of the consequences of that, however, is increased property taxes for New Yorkers. So the question is, what will be, is there anything in here that will demonstrate the relationship between the county expenses and opportunities with property tax, or what special fund, how will that work? And you don't have to answer that now, because I know it gets.
it seems like that should be part of the work.
Part of the study.
I'm
That's
just asking,
exactly
is it
right.
in there? That's really.
That absolutely, there are multiple things that the committee, as Senator Brewer said, the scope is quite large, and so. Studying exactly the interaction between the delivery of services and the cost effectiveness of those services is part of the study, and those are precisely the kind of questions that need to be answered.
Is there anything in there that will ask for sort of the discussion regarding local control issues? I know there are, we've tried in the past to have regional dispatch and regional fire service and so on, but there's always a resistance somewhere, and sometimes it's a state.
Yes, I think that's sort of embedded in the study itself, is that there's the sort of tension of local control versus state control. But I think that all of those issues will be part of the conversation in the study.
Okay, I'm just looking at the clock here.
Yeah.
obviously, I think we're going to study a number of issues that come up, and that is, are we going to grow another layer of government, and are we really building another program or another system that will be here competing for funding, of which we have a lot, or the extent. So this really gets into that kind of structured analysis around the economic benefit in the game, and I don't know whether that's clearly articulated enough, but I really think that a lot of it is the extent to which we're not competitive in grant applications, but it's also what will be the savings, potential estimated savings from the advantage, because you talked about the pros and the difficulty with our current or governmental structures. But I think it raises a lot of concerns around other states have actually devolved a lot of functions that are done at the state level down to the county level. That's true in California, for example, and many other states. So this is an enormous governmental and policy and fiscal examination that is really inherent in this work. So, and it may mean that in the end, it's just is not going to be feasible. I can't prejudge that. The question is how the committee wants to move forward. We would obviously take the appropriation out. We're not appropriating any money. We're not approving any positions, anything in today's as we're dealing with bills. We have and we're holding up like the bill that came out of judiciary on the 2 judges, because that is obviously a budgetary impact. So, do you want to move the bill and have we amended it?
Yes, I would move the bill as amended to pull the 50,000 for later consideration. And
When we do that, does that mean with the whole study group move out, or we just leave
No.
the group in?
The study group would move forward. It's
Yeah.
just the appropriation to support the contract and that kind of work. And then,
I'll second it unless the clerk already picked who intends to something.
because that is becoming an issue, the clerk picking who does that.
Yeah,
okay.
That is properly the chair's job.
we could add that to the agenda.
I skipped you too.
Who is the clerk?
Senator Westman is our clerk.
I didn't.
So I'm going to ask the
He looks
clerk,
so official.
unless there's
Yeah,
further
exactly.
discussion, we'll call the roll. I don't know whether, I wish, recommendations on the structure and organization. It just seems like hopefully that kind of structured analysis in terms of really identifying, what are the advantages, what are the disadvantages, what is the cost effectiveness, what, how, I don't know, it just seems like, it's very broad. And, but it's raising a lot of concerns. Are we creating another level of government that'll be out here coming in? Or creating another, like we've got with public education, where it's gonna be the property, it's gonna be the, I think that the county tax rate is part of the municipal, it's reflected in the municipal tax rate. So that's a great concern. Usually the league is quite concerned about anything that puts more pressure on their municipal budgets, because it means less for what they have for their town operation. So, all right, we have a motion and a second to move the bill as amended, and the amendment would be to strike this section with the appropriation, which
We're
is
doing it.
on page 4. Tim, I think we'll be doing it. It's the standard one that we always
Just take
use.
this stuff down.
We just delete on page 4, H, the appropriation for consulting. So you want to call the roll, please, Mr. Clerk?
Senator Lyons.
Yes. Did you get Bruce?
He might know and she has his own words.
That's somewhat
Yeah.
fair. That's somewhat fair.
Senator Sears.
Yeah.
Senator Starr.
No,
Senator Bruce.
Yes,
Senator Westman, yes. Senator Kitchell.
Yes.
think on your next bill too.
Yes, I was gonna say you're on for 215 as well. And. Yes, do we have copies of the bill? As passed out. You'll put it on our list. Okay. Oh, the reporter, did we do a reporter?
You didn't.
Okay, I don't know who has that section. Almost very neatly. In terms of,
Yeah.
well, we know Senator Starr is off because he voted no, so I think everybody's gonna vote no, so they don't have to report.
The practice too long meeting.
It really doesn't fit too well into anything.
Secretary of State.
And I guess that probably be the,
Secretary of State is, sorry.
I think it looks like,
well,
could be Senator Sears, it could be,
what? Okay, Senator Sears, because, Secretary of State is Senator Starr, and he's not reporting to the senator.
Well, he can't, he could report it.
No, you normally don't do it.
I know, but
Okay, so now we're on to 215, and this is a committee. No, this is the bill as introduced, and you passed it out as introduced?
we did. And just a comment, that I made to the committee when we passed it out was that, we passed it out so it would move forward. And we knew that the money would be coming out, the discussion here. And that we would, in our review of the budget, would include this as part of our discussion of the budget when it comes over our priority for the budget as a committee. So that still is something to be discussed.
Okay, so this is really something we'll have to discuss in the context of the appointment. I think so. Yes,
question.
yes, there is.
Reporter. Senator Harding.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my question about is, I received a letter from a former constituent from Aiden Dubois. And he shared a lot of concerns, which I won't get into all of them. But he did state that in the overwhelming minority of states that use restaurant meals program, it's typically fast food restaurants that contract with the state to permit the EBT card spending such as McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's, KFC, and so forth. I happen to like KFC here in Florida, Lynn, but not in Bennington. That's just an editorial. But he estimates monthly cost interest increase of about 54.3 million a year. That the state of Vermont would be on hook for, and the cost of its food stamp program.
Well, we've got two things here, is one of the allowing to use your food stamp benefit for restaurant meals.
Right, but
And then there's, I'm thinking he might be referring to section 4, which is a study, and what we're gonna have to
turn
discuss.
into a study, I guess.
Yeah,
Well, the study, what is being proposed here?
okay,
It's a state-funded supplement to the federal food stamp program. And that would be a very new program and would have to take more testimony because of the workload associated. But I will tell you that knowing what our fiscal situation is, to do a dollar for dollar supplement, using a different methodology this is really, very, very significant initiative here that would be, and I think probably that may be into the
That may be,
millions of dollars that's being referenced there.
would you like me to sort of just give you an overview of what's in the bill or?
Well, I think we know it. The bill
Okay.
is one position to help go out and enroll.
So the restaurant meals program is, there's a position in the bill that would support and provide technical assistance for the restaurant meals program, which, as Senator Kitchell said, would allow certain SNAP recipients to use an EBT card at restaurants, and it would be people who are 60 years and older, people who are disabled, and people who are unhoused. And the thought is that those people are the people who have probably the hardest time preparing meals. So being able to go use their EBT card at a restaurant is important for them. The technical assistance person that is in the bill, or the position that is in the bill, would help restaurants get onto the program so that they are able to participate from the restaurant side on the program. And I think the states where they don't have a position that is helping restaurants with the technical issues of getting onto the program, those are usually the ones that have the fast food restaurants, the chain restaurants. The states that do have a technical assistance person helping restaurants tend to have much broader array of restaurants, including locally owned and smaller ones. And the best example we got in our committee testimony was the state of Massachusetts, that has a lot of restaurants, including local delis and food trucks and, farmers markets and things like that, where people can use their EBT cards at those, because there's a person that has helped from the restaurant side to get the restaurants on. So that's the logic for the position, is to help have a broader array of restaurants that are able to participate in the
But we're
program.
getting into the priority setting, in terms of, if we're gonna have further discussion on it.
Yeah, I just wanted to answer that question. And then the second part of the bill, as Senator Kitchell said, is the report back about changing from a thrifty program to a moderate needs program for the SNAP benefit. And it would report back on what it takes to be able to do that financially and technically and from a staffing perspective.
And, that is something we need to discuss further, and vote would be something we would consider as part of our 25 budget presentation. Because, we're obligating, a study, and I guess, if I were doing a study, and we tend to do a study when we don't want to make a decision, but, I would tell you, knowing what the budget is and what it looks like and what we're underfunding, for us to say that we would ever have the money to do what is being proposed here, at least in the near future, is probably not very realistic. And so, and I guess I'm responding to somewhat Senator Sears is talking about, when and we're gonna be making choices. Do we try to do something more with judiciary so we can get our kids free for adoption, for example, to the work that's ahead? And so we've got so few choices all over the place. And I'm not debating that this might be a nice thing to do. The question ultimately is to get testimony. Is this how we want to use staff resources? And is this something that in fact is like we always do? If we don't have the money, we'll study it, and somehow somebody feels we gain something, when maybe everybody's sort of realistically saying it ain't gonna happen. So I don't like to engage necessarily in those exercises. So Senator Brooks.
I'm just wondering if I'm looking in the right place. I'm not seeing a study here.
Yes, it's section 4.
That's a transition plan.
It's so funny, we had this conversation on the committee too. It's supposed to be a report back on how you transition.
Oh, I don't view a transition plan as a study at all.
And so you've made a decision, you're gonna do it.
Right, and you're expending DCF
That resource.
resources to
I don't see. Sorry.
No, so I guess what I'm saying is, this seems to me to be, if the House and the Senate pass this, it seems like the question has been decided, that yes, we are.
My objection to this is we're creating an expectation that already is in place. And quite frankly, if I'm looking at the Dale budget, which I am, and I look around, I've got $1 million requests for Meals on Wheels. I've got a $5 million request from the Vermont Food Bank to do my food shelves. And if I create.
And what we don't have, which I will put out again, And the administration does not have it, and I'm not sure I can, but the benefits that we pay families is really very, very low. And so we're sitting here, looking at another new initiative, knowing that we really are, not doing justice to some of our poorest families and poorest citizens. So I'm not gonna spend more time. It does create the impression that we're transitioning to something. And it could be transitioning to nothing, transition to nirvana, but I think if this is something we'll put on the list for 90-25 and not act on the bill today.
Right.
So center stage.
And I'm fine with that. If we could ask for a joint fiscal office to look into the cost, what would it be if we did transition into this program?
Well,
Can I,
I'd like to
I just,
understand the dollars.
I just have to say with this, when you're creating the expectation that you're transitioning into a plan, where does this fit with all the other food programs that we already have?
Well,
And
we would
what,
have,
and the shortfalls there?
well, we would, if we do something with it, whether it's to examine the cost or whatever, it'll have to be in the context of 25. And I'm not sure we want to ask joint fiscal to engage in that analysis. We'd have to ask the department.
Yeah.
And it's, I realize this is something that is being promoted by some of the hunger organizations. But the way in which we're addressing hunger is in a myriad of ways. And this is something new. The other thing I'd just like to remind the committee is Vermont was one of the first states that did a pilot to cash out food stamp benefits. So our seniors actually don't get an EBT, they get cash, which they,
Yeah, if they're on request, they can.
yeah. So, and I don't think that door is open, and we're one of just a handful of states that did it, and it was way back.
When, can I just say something about the implementation piece, which is,
Because we're deferring it, but you can say whatever you want.
well, I'm saying that thank you. The recommendations will be, come in possible legislation or other work that has to happen. So that's not gonna come in, happen. Simply it's a transition from. Or implementation.
can I just say one more thing and then I will leave because I have to get back to my committee and you have the chair here. So, just a little bit of response to Senator Westman in terms of all those other programs that are being funded. I think there's a strong argument to be made that if we provided sufficient benefits, right now the minimum benefit is $23 a month for a single person on SNAP. And therefore, because of that, we need the food bank and Meals on Wheels and all these supplementary programs. If we were able to provide a more viable amount of money through SNAP, we wouldn't need the food bank and Meals on Wheels. And so it would actually just be a shift into paying for people to be able to feed themselves through this program. So that's one of the considerations.
There's a whole argument to have Meals on Wheels provides, particularly to older Vermonters, prepared meals. Now, would you create a whole new structure and administer a whole new structure administratively? That you're gonna end up and you start the path by hiring people here? Or would you put it through a system that already exists that in some counties isn't good? I think you're creating an expectation here that within the next 3 years, we can't.
This is more of a rhetorical stage because we're gonna have to have a lot more discussion about, is this the path we wanna go down? And would this be our top priority for our first dollar? Cause that's a base spending.
Yeah.
And a tremendous amount of pressure on anything related to base spending and what are our core services of government right now. So that's why you're getting hit with sort of intensity of feeling in terms of, yes, but look at the world and the reality that we're functioning in.
So I totally understand. Good
So
luck
I'm
with it.
gonna defer action on this request and we'll simply go on to the 25 budget. And then move on to another, he was gonna expect them to come in on 120. And 120 is post-secondary students and sexual misconduct protections.
Yeah, still on 160.
Okay,
Just
well,
one-
we're gonna
just
go
one
through
point.
it.
Well,
I was very clear.
167. I don't know if he's not, or he can come in on the road, we'll do both. Oh, okay, well then, okay, oh, well then we'll have to take it.
I thought he had. Or I guess the judge.
The judges, we're just holding this, I don't know, are those the judges that the governor included in his budget?
Yes.
Okay, so that's
The only.
not additional. I see you've got on here, you've got a $2.8 million, I don't know what to do about that check.
Which?
At this
You
point,
ever,
195,
Um,
when you hear,
that's gotta be.
you always.
but, yeah, 2.5.
Takes 2.8 million, estimated cost,
Talking about county.
7 positions.
Years you go.
That's the estimated cost from joint fiscal, where we
Yeah,
are.
that's the tree trials.
Yeah, that's a whole new,
Well,
Find a place.
it's new, but it's not.
we're gonna have to, yeah. We'll put that, well, that's not very compelling in my case. John, thank you for coming in, I just didn't want you to stand there while.
Oh, no worries. Thank you for the,
You're still looking down.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I don't know, they're Hampstead. Yeah. I mean, one nice to.
Committee, we're going to move on now to S-120, and this is a bill that's come out of our Senate Education Committee, so we have, Senator Hasheen here. It must carry an appropriation to,
Thank you.
to the Center for
22 grand.
22 grants. Oh, okay, so, do you wanna just, give us a quick overview or, in terms of what the bill does, and then you've got, a requested appropriation here. My question is, our normal practice is just to remove appropriations and consider them. This would be a one-time appropriation that's being requested here?
yes,
Okay, okay. But the rest of the bill could move forward as it relates to policy around what schools should do and so forth?
Correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
yeah, thank you for having me. I'll keep it, very brief. So, S-120 is a bill that would create basically a statewide standard, when it comes to some of the rules surrounding how colleges and universities address, sexual misconduct on their campuses. At a high level, the first section has to do with ensuring that support services, that memoranda of understanding are created with support services for students to be able to access those support services. The second section has to do with amnesty protections. So if there's a student who's underage and they're at a party drinking, but they're also sexually assaulted, they can feel safe in being able to go and report that assault without ramification, without consequence or
Did we
these.
something on this before this
Yeah.
bill?
And we did this last year.
We did,
So could you connect
yes.
what here
So
with what we,
This,
some of us are trying to remember?
this
what
bill
we
was
did?
introduced last year, and it's been worked on. It was worked on last year and over the summer with the stakeholders.
Sherry did a bill last year on this.
I thought we did something.
2 years ago.
We did, this is, part of this removes a sunset that we put on in 2021. So 2021 was the original
Okay.
year that we did this, and this building on,
So this is
Yeah.
building and.
Yeah.
Okay, I was just trying to put it in some historical context, because I know that we've had some discussion around the very issue in the past, so I apologize for
Go ahead,
interrupting,
no,
sort of
no.
like,
No worries.
um.
That was good to be
It's
added.
like, this is, it's been a topic of legislative discussion and action now, so, all right, let's keep going then. So it gets rid of the sunset and it builds on what we did.
Yes. And the next section has to do with annual awareness programming and training for students, staff, and faculty regarding sexual misconduct in general. I won't go through the whole list of all of the things, but so programming and training, and then there's the Intercollegiate Sexual Harm Prevention Council, which helped perform a lot of the work and bring together a lot of the stakeholders. There was a lot of conversation between the different groups who were interested in this bill, and the appropriation, as was mentioned, would be $22,000 to the Prevention Council to pay for the work that folks who would otherwise not get paid to compensate them. And
So did we create the council then in that
Yes.
prior bill? That's what we
21.
did. Okay.
Did an education when I was there.
And initially, there was the intent to make it permanent. That was a point of some contention. It went to education. Education came up with a 4-year sunset. And so that's what we're addressing.
I see.
In part now.
And that's the very high level overview of what the bill does. And I would just be remiss if I didn't mention 2 quick data points, which is that in Vermont, women between the ages of 18 to 24 are 4 times more likely to be sexually assaulted, and 1 out of 6 women will experience sexual assault compared to 1 out of 33 men. And this is from the Vermont Center for Crime Victims. And yeah, I appreciate the consideration.
All right, Senator Fruit.
But the appropriations be ongoing, because since we're repealing the repeal, that council will continue to meet, so there would be an annual need for the. It's not just a one.
In that case, I'm not sure.
I believe so. I think this is to make it a permanent fixture. If I might, Madam,
Do we have any financial participation by our institutions of higher education?
that was my,
Like Middlebury, Norwich, UVM?
Their own group.
when this was created, one of my questions was, it wasn't doing anything that the institutions couldn't do themselves. But I understand there's an important role for the state to say, we want this to happen.
And
Okay.
uniformly,
But with that said, if it's going to be permanent, these are, generally speaking, pretty wealthy institutions. Their part of the appropriation would be very small. So I didn't understand originally why there wasn't a mechanism to turn over the costs to
well,
them.
maybe we can explore that if we're going to,
Yeah.
just, our amendment would be to,
Yeah.
delete section 6 and we'll put it on our list for the 25, but
Mhm.
in the meantime, perhaps we can come up with something that looks at some, structure
Right.
to actually have the institutions, because they're getting the benefit of this kind of collective effort,
Right.
to, underwrite, the work that's required, to staff the council.
Mhm.
All right, thank you, Goddard. And, it's a good thing we have a couple members of education.
Indeed.
Judiciary.
Oh, and judiciary too.
It came out of judiciary.
Pardon me.
The bill, and got referred to education this year, but the bill originally came out.
Came out of judiciary. Well, thank you.
Start forward, thank you.
All right, well, Senator Sears, thank you for also setting the historical record straight.
Yes.
Further discussion on the bill?
I just want to say, I really appreciate that the committee has gone back to this and is moving it forward further because as somebody who works in higher ed, as somebody who has all daughters, this was always a frightening thing for me to contemplate. My daughters came up to college.
So I do in testimony on the bill, Madam Chief. Did you get a sense of what the council, what this work that has been over this limited period of time? What, we invest, we say it's really an important, issue that's got to be examined. Do we have any sense of what we've accomplished so far? Because councils need, and some are very effective and really drive a lot of change, and others not so. And I'm just
Yeah.
wondering, with a 4 years experience, what has been, was there a sense of what the council, the creation of the council had created kind of the results that hoped for or good progress? And the reason I'm thinking about it is like we had this progress report on smoking reduction, and there wasn't a shred of data that helped us track what our progress was. So I'm just wondering if
Sure.
you could
At least in the
tell us a little bit about what your testimony indicated.
Sure, so at least in the context of this bill, the council. Well, actually going back a little bit, there was initially a lot of disagreement from various stakeholders, independent colleges, universities. And so there was a lot of collaboration that I believe was orchestrated by the council to bring folks together and also work through the language. And it's my understanding they spent a lot of time over the summer bringing these different parties together to find a place where this. And I mean, for example, we spent, at least in committee, there was still some lingering issues, and we spent probably half an hour, 45 minutes discussing the difference between the words ensure or facilitate. But aside from that, there was a lot of work when it came to what sections would work, what sections wouldn't work, and where language needed to be modified. And at the end of the day, folks are on, there's consensus for the language. So in the context of this bill, I feel that they were effective and in staying organized over the summer to keep the conversation going regarding the bill as they were asked to do so last year.
Okay. I was just wondering if any of the representatives from some of our colleges might have come back and said how they, how this work had benefited whatever policies or procedures that they put in place. I was just thinking about how does this council and its work and recommendations translate into some kind of positive or specific response from those institutions. And it was just more of a area. We often hear we'll invest and try to put something forward. It's just a matter of at some point saying, did it accomplish what we hoped?
I would say that this bill definitely accomplished the organization that was brought together and the conversations that were had about what's being done versus what's not being done and what type of statewide standard we can create.
Other questions? All right, Beth, you know what we're gonna do here with this bill.
Section 6, correct?
Yes. Could I have a motion to move the bill as amended, Senator Ruth, and then seconded by Senator Brooksmith? Further discussion? Did somebody have a question?
Well, you have an in with the clerk, you need to change it.
So just one quick question. So there was a report that came out regarding from the council, last year, the year before, I'm trying to remember when it was, but did you access that report?
I'm not sure of the.
Okay.
It doesn't matter.
I don't remember.
There was a task force, and the task force recommended that we create a council, but the council was created, and then I'm trying to find.
I remember when we were on it
Yeah.
together,
Yeah.
and there was a big discussion about all this, and I said, well, we want this report. Anyway.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, we need to call the roll. Our clerk is still clerking.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Are you all set with me?
Thank you.
Can I ask for regular order on the roll call?
And then, also, our
I
next
still call the
bill is,
regular, but you can go
Senator
last.
Canby, if you want to send it in, it's 167, which is, an act related to miscellaneous amendments to the education law.
Sounds good. I can, I'll make sure I'll relay the.
So you don't need to wait until we call the roll. If you would just want to, if you can come in right now, that would be great.
Sure, and quick question, so will this be on the floor tomorrow, assuming?
It'll go
Beyond
on
those.
those.
Yeah,
It'll be on the- okay. Thank you very much.
What was your other bill?
Yeah, it's the-
259.
it's super fun.
Oh, the super fund. Oh.
Okay, that's the big one.
Take your time on.
Yeah.
You did call
Oh, all
it.
right, thank you. Okay.
Huh?
You do call
So
it.
we're gonna call the
Yeah.
roll.
Senator Burr,
Yes.
Senator Lyons,
Superfund costs coming from.
Senator Perch,
Yes.
Yes.
Senator Sears,
Yes,
Senator Starr,
Yes,
Senator Weston, Jess, Senator Kinchen.
Yes.
did you call all nine?
I don't think Lions have,
Yes.
She said yes, if you listen.
For the YouTube record, we.
And who's the reporter?
Education, is it?
Senator.
Happy to do it.
And then maybe we can figure out what could be some kind of a bill back or some kind of mechanism to
Yeah.
support
Because
this.
of that.
If there's an association of higher education,
Well, we
maybe you
could
can,
short both. The vice chair or the.
you wanna go on the record now? Where,
Well, it might be good to be on it. I
Okay.
don't know. On the way up today, I saw a sign that I've never seen before.
oh, yeah,
I have it highlighted, said loose grip or something to that effect. Loose grip going up Killington Mountain.
the surface of the road.
That I was gonna lose my grip. And I've never seen one of those before, and I wondered if transportation had knew what they were.
probably.
Loose grips.
no,
I know it's a grip of the tires on the road.
Wow, it wasn't a little hairy coming up there. I've never seen, usually it's icy.
Yeah,
or-
I would generally say, so I say
I
something
mean-
losing their
Grip
grip.
is very.
It usually doesn't.
Yeah, maybe it was just a reference to you.
Right, but it was a road sign going up Killington. Loose grip.
Here, lose grip.
Losing grip. On reality, it may be, but
They
I
only,
think some of your,
We can propose a study committee.
they
well, I
only,
think a 10-member committee would be.
Yeah. Well, meaning there is,
Well,
I'll get, yeah.
no, actually, maybe the department, I just think, when you're driving in icy, slippery weather,
Just say I see that.
just say icy, slippery.
Was it gravel? Or was it?
No, it was
asphalt?
Route 4.
yeah, they forgot, they ran out of sand and salt and got going.
Well, they didn't say that, it just said loose grip.
Road,
so,
Something that was snowy,
yeah.
in the passing lane, had.
Electronic signs?
Yeah.
167. Oh, okay, that can do it. All right, sorry. All right. Thank you, Hannah, for reminding me. Senator Campion, said that it wasn't necessary that he come in, that can, redo the bill with us and move it. And like some of it is,
Is that
Yes.
community staff?
That's serious.
Yeah, no, I'll ask.
so,
Thank you for pitching that percentage.
so, Minnie, if I can bring you back to order, we're gonna start on Center Westman, 167. And we have Beth St. James who's gonna run through the changes, look like. And probably you're doing some update of amounts, probably, high cost at $500,000 is not high cost anymore. So if you wanna run us through the bill, oh, hi, Brian. I forgot, I had a brain cramp and I forgot you said that you were happy with Beth running through the bill. But if you want to,
How'd it go?
join us,
What was?
we just started.
No, please. We'll see you later. Thanks,
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Thanks for your leadership.
Yeah. And your delegation skills. Okay, so I'm gonna suggest we run through this quickly, and, if you will sort of go through on the money side, that would be great. Is there any other money than the 2 million?
No,
That's on money.
that's St. James Office of Legislative Counsel. There's really no money in this. Section 1 is an amendment to the statute that addresses school construction contracts and the threshold at which a school board has to go out to bid for those contracts. So section 1 changes that threshold from $500,000 to 2 million.
When was the last time it was changed?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't know off the top of my head. I'd be happy to look that up. and get back
I was
to you on
just
that.
wondering, because, with inflation, 500,000
Is
today.
there a dollar amount that would have to go to the voters? I remember that when I was in education, some schools wanted that change. So when I first saw this, I thought that was that, but that's.
No, this is about bids, public bids.
For school
Yeah, we
construction
did.
contracts.
We did that 500,000 a few years back.
Yeah.
Doesn't
I'm
have
sure-
to be any construction.
If this is in Title 16, so any construction that a school district would take on, yes.
And
And
then
then,
moving the threshold, up. I suspect if it's back when Senator Starr is talking about just with inflation on labor, that this is probably.
I will confirm that for you.
That's fine, we'll keep going.
Okay, section 2 is just some cleanup to post-secondary schools that are accredited and therefore allowed to
Well,
operate
we've
in
got
Vermont.
selected from 3 or fewer.
Oh, okay, sure.
Where's that?
Yes, on page 2, thank you. Line
We had a grammar lesson on fewer versus less than.
We still have debate on transportation.
Yeah, I know. So here we have selected from among the 3 or fewer lowest responsible.
Bids to the agenda.
Yeah.
Mm.
So what do you think, Senator Brewer?
Passes muster with me.
Okay.
Because
The selection shall be selected from among, okay. This is. Any comments on that, other than just the grammar?
The mustard.
very well.
Can I ask you, is lowest the right word? Okay,
Yeah.
I'm good.
The 3 lowest, 3 or fewer, if you only got 2 bids, I suppose, that's what it intended to address, is
correct.
that correct? All right, anything else, post-sec accredited, that's just updating, probably for, post-secondary schools that are still in operation on the bottom of page 3.
Correct. This is updating, updating the Vermont Law Graduate School name to reflect a graduate, and then also striking, post-secondary schools that are no longer operating.
And then section 3 is getting us, Holocaust curriculum.
Section, actually, I missed this always myself. Line 6 is actually section 3.
Oh, yeah,
And then,
25.
yep, keeping out the effective date for the all hazards operation plans required under the school safety bill from last year. And then section 4 is regarding data collection related to Holocaust education. Do you want me to go into any more detail
No, I
on
think that
that?
gets into education policy and curriculum. So, we don't see that. And the last,
It's section 5 on page 5, line 9 is an addition to the flexible pathways subchapter of a statute addressing virtual learning. Virtual learning is already a component of flexible pathways. It has been allowed and is currently operating. But this is just codifying a program of virtual learning. There's a program for early college and dual enrollment. And there's nothing for virtual learning, so this is codifying that flexible pathways.
so it's really reflective of what's in practice now.
Correct.
Is that any student?
There is some eligibility criteria, so it's, if you look at line 15, the student has to be enrolled in a Vermont public school, including a CTE. Virtual learning has to be determined to be an appropriate part of their personalized learning plan, so it's not for everyone. And the virtual learning experience has to occur under certain parameters that the state and the state board will set related to teacher licensing and minimum courses of study, et cetera.
Okay, then for,
I have a question about the last section.
on section 7,
Yes,
Homestead.
home study.
oh, that's where we've been getting emails.
Right, and so this looks to me as though the committee had scaled down what we're doing the study. This is only about hearings for individual cases, not about, for instance, reinstating the requirement of portfolio, yearly portfolio.
Correct. Section 7, starting at the very bottom of page 6, but really the substance of it begins at the very top of page 7, is language that was struck last year and had been in effect for many years prior to that, related to the Secretary of Education being allowed to call a hearing after a student was enrolled in a home study program. If the secretary had information to believe that the home study program was not going to be providing the student with what the statute required. That language was struck last year
Accidentally or purposely?
purposefully. And then brought back this year.
Can I ask about, and I realize this is off the money, but can I ask about what the rationale was for regarding it, in effect, as an error. To have struck
I'm not
it.
sure.
If we struck it purposefully and we're returning to it now, it seems there's an acknowledgement that we shouldn't have struck it. So why?
So I would suggest that would be a great question for the committee. They did take testimony around this, and it was an issue that was brought to the committee.
Yeah.
Regarding some constituent feedback they received on perhaps less eyes on folks who were in a home study program,
Okay,
and there being perhaps an unintended consequence of the overhaul that happened last session. In having less oversight or less eyes on students in the home study program. But the purpose and the intent behind that, I would encourage you to reach out to Senator Campion
I
on.
guess we'll have to do that because I believe he made some comment about there'd been testimony and this was something that had been agreed to. I can't fill in the blanks on
Yeah.
it, so I guess we'll have that. So,
but I am glad that the committee went back on the portfolio system because I think that would have been an additional mistake had they gone down that.
But then
okay,
other states do virtual learning. And I'm quite familiar with one of them. And I'm telling you, I'd rather not have it in Vermont.
well, it's already, you're back in the other section, section
We've
5.
had-
I know where I am. but
No,
They don't know where they are.
no. Well, we're going back to section 5. The conversation right now is on section 7 on home study. So do you want to, let's finish on 7, then we can go back to 5 if you have more
I'm
comments.
satisfied with, I appreciate the answers and it's fine.
All right, Senator Pursley.
So it seems to me that the secretary, at the hearing, the secretary shall establish one or more of the following, and they're only negative outcomes. Like, so it's like, once they've had the hearing, they can either say they failed, or they will not provide the student. They can't say, we did the hearing and this course of study is fine.
So there's an independent hearing officer, so this would be like two different parties, right? The secretary is one
Right.
party and then the student's family would be another. So this language is indicating basically the burden of proof that the state has to carry
To terminate,
to terminate, correct, to terminate, to
So
get an order terminating.
at the hearing, the secretary shall establish one or more of these. So they have.
in order to justify the order of termination, you have to then, establish one of those, factors is in play as the basis of their decision to terminate.
I take what Senator Perchik is saying, though, that it's a little, it makes it seem as though there's only gonna be negative outcomes allowed. But it could say something like, at the hearing, in order to justify blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
The secretary shall establish.
Because it's because of the.
Because there might be circumstances where in fact there would be no termination after the,
Right,
hearing.
I hear you on this. The committee chose to take the language as it stood last year. But to address some of that, I hear you. I think I hear what you're saying on subsection E there. Subsection G does contemplate that order, that the order either shall be to
Right.
continue enrollment or to terminate enrollment. So it does not, that awkward language aside, does not foreclose the possibility that the hearing officer could issue an order continuing enrollment.
Right, so I guess what that 3 is that the secretary is saying, I'm establishing one of these as the reason we're having the hearing, not that making a conclusion.
The hearing
The
officer,
hearing officer makes a conclusion.
Based on the facts. So, committee, the only reason we have it here is because the 500,000 has changed, to 2 million.
And even that isn't, I guess it changes that what the schools can spend. It doesn't spend general fund.
No. So the impact on the general fund,
and it's
There
just
is
like
none.
they need to go out to bid.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just a lot of things, you know.
so, shall we move the bill favorably, Senator Brewer?
I thought exactly.
Okay, Senator Starr, seconded. Oh, all right, did you want to go back to section 5 on virtual learning? You had a comment or a question? No.
Not a fan of virtual learning.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm gonna take it.
You should report to Bill virtually.
Well, we could have,
Unless there's further discussion, I'm gonna call up the roll.
But it was through,
Yes, and it's, seconded by
Sorry.
Rocky, Heather Starr. And since it's education, we know the reporter, but I'll roll it. And
Which one's gonna be busy?
So prepared to vote.
good, I'm glad I'm not ready for you yet. Senator Brewer,
Yes.
Senator Lyons.
Yes,
Senator Purchase.
Yes.
Senator Sears,
Yes,
Senator Starr,
yes,
Senator Wesley Chess, Senator Kitchell,
yes,
Brewer.
Yes.
Do a vote twice.
it's the reporter. Committee, I am not taking up S 96, at all today. I think there was some discussion about,
Thank you.
Congress committee wanting to have some opportunity. And so, we're gonna take a break and we'll come back to 247, which is whoop, S 98, sorry, S 98, we'll come back to S 98. Well, we gotta change the board now.
What was 96?
privatization.
Privatization.
The one,
we actually don't have something that.
Yeah, we're not gonna pick it up.
S98 is up there?
no.
Well, according to Hannah, she's gonna put it up there, and that's you. Okay, Hannah's right.
What's
What's 98?
That's, Green Dot.
Prescription drugs.
Prescription drug.
And I may have to go back up to the House floor.
Should judiciary look at